So today's interview, as promised, is all about podcasts, but we're going to do the backstory with Claire as well and talk about how she got into podcasts and how the media has changed. So as promised, we're chatting to Claire Bullivant. I'm just going to read her little bio because all of you know now to do bios. Claire Bullivant is a journalist and marketing director at Bullivant Media. They are publishers of 16 regional newspapers, including the Coventry, Worcester and Stratford-upon-Avon Observers. Claire also runs and manages Bullivant Media's magazines, social media and podcast divisions. She co-hosts hit podcast Brits in the Wood about celebrities in Hollywood and presents various news radio shows, including What's on Solihull Radio. Claire is passionate about keeping regional newspapers and local media alive. Without regional press, she says, important stories aren't told, council meetings go uncovered and communities are left without a voice. Absolutely agree. In her free time, Claire loves to write romantic comedy, screenplays, studies politics, photography, and is currently writing a children's book about hedgehogs who save the world. Wow, that sounds interesting. Hello, Claire.
You said everything and there's nothing left to say, but hello, thank you so much for having me on your show.
No, it's lovely. Thank you so much for joining us. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because you do the podcast and like you say, you're not used to doing the camera bit, but it's just normal. And this is going out live to our community, which is perfect. So can we start? Because you've been in the media a long time and I've known of the Bullivant name for a long time and our paths have crossed all with your family over the years because I've worked in the Midlands media a long time. Tell us about how you got started in the media and the backstory to Bullivant Media.
Well, my parents set up the first ever free newspaper. Well, they think it's the first ever free weekly newspaper, but there could have been odd ones. But they definitely are in the history books for doing the first ever free daily newspaper, which was the Birmingham Daily News in Birmingham. And I remember, I was very little, but I do remember growing up on the newspaper office floor. I would, every school holiday, every school opportunity, I would go and I'd help in the editorial department or I'd be in accounts or sales. So I really did grow up on the newspaper floor, and news, and local news especially, has just always been a passion. I just remember being about 12 and getting my first story published. One of the editors got me a little bit in one of the papers and it was like the happiest day of my life. And ever since then, I've just always loved writing, loved telling a story. And being a journalist was just followed. It was just a natural progression for me, really. So I studied it at university, went on and did marketing as well. And then I kind of fell into the whole podcast realm, which I'm really excited about now. So, that's the very start of it.
Fantastic. And it is quite scary. I know I'm getting old now because I actually remember your family and I'm like the next generation up to you. But so obviously we know the media has changed, but how has it changed in terms, before we get onto the podcast, because it is all relevant, because we're all here to learn about the media and how it's changed so we can get our publicity for our businesses or to be the expert or comment and just, connect as a business owner in the community. How has it changed, Claire, from the regional titles that you now look after?
Well, obviously newspapers have suffered. Advertising revenue, we've lost a lot of it to the likes of Google and online and Facebook. So newspapers, we've had to be creative, we've had to think outside the box, and we've had to expand onto the digital networks. Social media is now a massive part of what we do. Our editors, our journalists, they used to work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5:30. They don't. It's a 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, often for them. If there's a local story that's breaking, we need to put it up there. The newspapers are obviously still very important because a lot of our communities, they're still the most trusted medium. People definitely don't necessarily trust national press anymore or the news on TV, but local newspapers, it's shown time and time again from the News Media Association that it is the number one respected and trusted press. So it's still very important for our communities to get a paper through the door, and also to embrace, not be scared of all these new technology and digital and online. We need to embrace it. We're in the perfect position to embrace it. We're in each of our towns. We are at the forefront of it. So let's help our communities and not be afraid of it. I think that's the That's the way we've looked at it. A lot of newspapers across the world have just kind of given up. You hear about, especially in America, a lot of newspapers have closed their doors, but we see it as an opportunity.
Fantastic. And obviously, like you say, you've adapted, but you still kept the community spirit. You've still got the voice of the community, which is what you're all about. So which brings us on to the podcast. And obviously, October, we're focusing all about podcasts within Media Matchmaker. And it seems to have exploded. It's almost like come back in fashion, hasn't it, podcasts? It started off quite a few years ago, and they've really exploded in the last 12 months, 18 months. So why podcast then? Why was it important to bring that into your kind of community brand?
Well, it all started for me. I was living in Australia. I was in Australia. Then I went to LA for the last sort of 10, 12 years. And I became good friends with someone called Caroline Faraday, who's a well-known broadcaster, and did lots of radio. She was on Capital and Radio 1 and all that sort of thing. And we just happened to be having a drink on Sunset Boulevard one night. And I'd recently started listening to podcasts. This was probably 2016. And we came up with the idea of just starting a podcast over there called Brits in the Wood. So it was all about British people, what they were doing and making a difference in Hollywood, we called it. And so we started doing that. Our first guest happened to be, Caroline knows lots of amazing people. So Tony Hadley came on as our first guest. And it just flew from there. We ended up having some incredible guests, and we've done that for a couple of years. Caroline had a baby. I've come back here now for a bit, at least, to set up the podcast over here for our newspapers. But that was a great introduction. And I saw how this medium could just fly. I remember one podcast we had. I mean, we did have several A-list guests, but Caroline said, "Oh, I've got some social media superstars that I'd like to get on the podcast." And I was like, "Okay, never heard of them," but they came on the podcast and they did like one tweet, and we got something like 150,000 listens in 24 hours in 74 different countries, and it just showed me the power of podcasting. And from there, I started talking to my parents and our directors and saying, look, this is a medium that we as news deliverers of news, we need to get on board this and we need to embrace this. And so I came back over. I came at the start of the year for a few months, had to go back for some work in LA. But I've been here pretty much now for the last sort of 4 or 5 months. And we've been setting up local news podcasts for our communities. So every week for each one of our local newspapers, we'll get a local person. Maybe it's the captain of the local football team, or the person who runs the theatre, or somebody who's appearing at the theatre. We'll do an interview with them. We'll also then chat through that week's local news stories, the biggest news stories that week, and then we'll also do a what's on selection of things to do and see that week in town. And it was really slow to start with, but it started to fly. And we've got several people right now who are constantly calling us. And it's really great because it's getting the community involved. And I think we probably, I think we are one of the first newspaper groups, the local newspaper groups, to really embrace it. And we're really enjoying it. And also I was a little bit worried because obviously our editors are fantastic editors of the newspapers. But I was worried if they were going to be any good at interviewing people. But they're all naturals. They do it every day. They know what the news is. Yeah. And so it's so easy for them. And we're all really enjoying it.
Fantastic. So in terms of obviously the demographic then, you're obviously bringing you think it's a much younger, I don't really know the demographic podcasts, but you would think it's the younger generation, although I'm sadly one of the older ones now, and I'm listening to podcasts all the time, so maybe I've answered my own question. So how are you seeing it? Because I would imagine it's widening your demographic. That's what I'm trying to get to across your newspapers and now online with social media and your podcasts.
Very much so. I think a lot of our demographics for readers maybe are sort of middle-aged to elderly people, and a lot of our listeners of the podcast are a lot younger. It definitely is, and also we're seeing that on social media as well. We also have like Instagram for all of our newspapers, and we're finding we're reaching young people through Instagram and the podcast that we haven't reached on Facebook and through the newspapers. It's a whole different market, which is one that we love is opening up to us.
Brilliant. So in terms of everybody that's watching this now, we're all here because we want to try and get publicity for our business. We want to try and position ourselves as the experts, or and have some kind of association in our local community, because we know that you're very much community driven. Everybody who watches this knows that they need to come from a community angle. But what is it you look for if, let's say, you have guests? I mean, do you have guests on your podcasts?
Yeah, every podcast really has a guest. As I say, it could be somebody visiting the town who's performing at the local theatre, or it could be somebody who is we've just done about 3 this morning. I'm just trying to think who we had on. We had somebody who's looking to raise funds for her daughter who needs a serious operation. She's got scoliosis and she has to raise £81,000 for her daughter. So we had her on this morning. We also had someone who's doing a Redditch rethinks rubbish, and they've got a massive rubbish fashion show happening next weekend, and they're doing this partnering with this place in Africa, Mtwara, and lots of recycling information and all that sort of stuff. So every single one is so different, and there's so many opportunities. And we find that it's not difficult getting guests. Everybody wants to come on our podcast. And yeah, we feel like it's just another string to our bow, really. And then we put it on our social media accounts, and we put teasers on our Twitter and everything. So I wish I'd known now what I knew. I wish I'd known 2 years ago what I know now, kind of thing, because there's a lot of things I would have done differently. But it's definitely a growing market, and we've got to embrace it. And we're really enjoying doing so.
So in terms of this story, obviously it needs to have a community angle. But for those that are listening to this, they might be in your area. Obviously I'm a Brummie, Solihull, but I keep saying Birmingham. A Midlands lass. And if we wanted to connect to you with a story, would it have to have a local connection, a regional angle to it, to give it? Do you cover B2B as well, or is it just like consumer community stories?
It's absolutely everything. We do business consumer. Yeah, we do it all. If anybody has a good local story, I always think, I've written for magazines for years and also been a journalist. So I really do think if you are trying to get your business or a story into the press, one of the easiest things I always say to people to do is just be really proactive. Send the photos in, give them a permission to use them, write a press release. Even if you can't write press releases, just give as much information as possible, because at the end of the day, our editors and our journalists get so many stories submitted, and we're now getting so many people asking to be on our podcast. It's just the more information you can do and the more proactive, and that's the way to get in. Definitely.
That's music to my ear, because we are all nervous, we're all scared, we're all like, oh, well, they want to talk to us, and podcast is it's a great way to have a conversation, isn't it? And a great way for people to really get to know you, because often it's not as staged, it's not a soundbiting, it's a proper conversation, it's a proper talk and a chat, isn't it? So people really get to know that business owner or the community person.
I feel it's the new second wave of radio, in like the 30s and 40s that they all got very excited about radio. I feel like we're at this dawn of a new era. And I feel with radio, though, somebody described it to me actually recently as radio is an inch deep and a mile wide, whereas podcasts are an inch wide and a mile deep. You get the stories behind the stories. You get the personalities coming through. You get you can't fit all that on a quick radio interview. In radio, they're trying to be very quick. They're worried people will turn over on the channel in their car. They've got music, they've got advertisers. In podcasts, you can really get down to the nitty gritty. And I really want to start doing some more local ones, talking to just interesting people. We've got, I interviewed a lady the other day who was actually at Bletchley during the war and all parts of that, a local lady, and I'd love to get their stories. I think these are stories that are so important, and they need to be recorded for our communities for future generations. Just getting them onto the podcast is just a great way of doing it. And the other great thing is podcasts are on demand, like radio and everything is. you have to wait for your show. But with podcasts, they're on demand, and now everyone's got a smartphone. Lots of cars now have the connectivity to have podcasts. You know, all these new electric Teslas and things, they're incredible. So in another couple of years, it's definitely going to be, I mean, already I think maybe 20%, is it 21% of the population now in the UK listens to podcasts? I'm sure it's going to be more like 80% in a couple of years' time. It's growing magnificently. So.
Well, there's so many opportunities. So just not, and thank you so much for sharing the insights with it, because, you know, it's not just your kind of opportunities connected to the regional areas that you're in. People might be outside and they can contact people that are hosting other podcasts. And I'm very much, you know, trying to advise people, Claire, that they need to go to the podcasts that have got the listeners, that their potential customers, so that the kind of all needs to match really well. What's not to do? What should they not do? Where would they go wrong when people approach you? Because, you know, if you get a press release, you go, oh God, you know, what should we not do?
For a press release to get just any sort of
podcast, yes, you know, or to write a press release. So typically we know that a lot of people sometimes will write a press release and it's mostly an advert. They're just trying to promote themselves. Is there any kind of tidbits of what we shouldn't do really in the way we approach you?
I think every editor is probably different. I love it when people actually just pick up the phone to me. I know it's very old school nowadays, but if somebody just contacts me on Facebook or something, you know what it's like. You probably have the same. You have hundreds and hundreds of Facebook messages. I don't get to see them all, especially as I look after all our newspapers. I don't always get to see them all. So yeah, a personalised email to me, or picking up the phone and just saying, hey, this is the story. I like that approach. Some of our editors I know prefer a well-written email, but it doesn't matter if you don't write well. It's just the story, isn't it? And some people always say to us, what makes a good story? Anything can make the best story ever. It doesn't need to be all bells and whistles. We had one story recently, last Christmas or something, I think it was, and it was one of our towns ran out of lard or something ridiculous. And it was one of our best read stories ever. It sounds so stupid, but this man went to another place and bought lard in and gave it to everyone to make their Christmas cake or something. But it was like a really silly story, but it really was like one of our best stories ever read, online at least anyway. So you never know what's going to make a good story, and just keep trying. I mean, that's the number one rule in life, isn't it? Just keep on trying and keep knocking on doors and keep picking up the phone.
And that's music to our ear, because a lot of the business owners and entrepreneurs that are watching this work for themselves or have smaller businesses. Some have PR agencies, you know, they can write a press release or get their PR agency to write it. And we still very much support PR agencies. They do a great job. But the majority of people that are following Media Matchmaker are doing it for themselves. So are you happy for them to approach you themselves? They don't need a PR agency or anything like that?
Totally approach themselves. But also, definitely, I said it before, do say in your email, you can use my photos. Because often I know when I'm putting like papers or magazines or something to bed, I might be after another page quickly, and I'll literally have to find something. And if I can't get hold of someone at 9:30 at night and they haven't given me permission to use their photos, I'm just going to, I haven't got time to chase it. So put everything in there. So you can use my photos, you can change my story, top and tail it as you want. You can just give them permission to do whatever. That really helps, and you'll find if you help the editors, you'll be helping yourself in the long run to get your work published or get your story in the paper.
Fantastic.
Or online.
Do you ever go back and use, because we know a lot of the media outlets like the BBC or ITV, they share their contacts and they go back sometimes and revisit stories, or they might get an expert to come back in to talk about something. Do you ever go back to contributors and ask them all maybe to take part on a regular basis? I'm not sure how that works from a podcast point of view.
We do for some of our magazines. For example, we're doing a Christmas magazine at the moment, and I've got various people who've contributed over the last couple of years who are contributing again. And this year, also our wedding magazine, we do a wedding magazine which I write for and edit, and I do that with them. So yeah, for magazines more so, but for the newspapers not so much. And podcast guests, of course, if someone's really interesting, yeah, we would love them back again and again. I interviewed someone recently actually who runs a lot of the PR and marketing for our local theatres. And I actually said to her last week, she was on as a guest, but I'd love to get her on one of the podcasts on a regular basis because she was just so good, knew her stuff, knows the area, and would be a really valuable member of the team. And she loves doing it as well. So yeah, that's. I mean, I think that probably is a lesson in how things work a lot of the time, isn't it, in business? If you get on with someone and they are enthusiastic and good.
Absolutely. And also then, so therefore, and this is all brilliant, what about an intro? So can they provide you, like you've said, you've kind of shared with us, the more they can give to you, the permission, the images, should they provide you with perhaps an intro? We've had other journalists that have said, yeah, send us the intro and the out, you know, how you want us to kind of go out with you. Would you, you know, what's the checkout or whatever it's called? So can they provide you with a bio kind of intro? So like I read yours to start with, does that help you? And would you use that?
Oh my goodness, the more you can help, the better. I mean, at the end of the day, our editors are always really busy. Everything's always going to deadline. The more work you can do for them, the better chance you have of being published or whatever. But also always say, you have my permission to change it as you see fit. Because that gives them carte blanche to do what they want and cut and copy, you know. It's just they don't want to be chasing you at 11 o'clock at night saying, can I quickly change that? Just give them all the permissions, basically.
Absolutely brilliant. No, you've been really helpful, and I really appreciate this because I know you're full of cold and you're struggling, and it's
few days, but I feel a lot better. This is making me feel better. I love talking about this. So
well, thank you, Claire. It's brilliant, and I know that you're part of. I think you've joined the Facebook group as well, which is brilliant. So it's great to have you part of the community, and thank you, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. Claire, if you stay on for a minute, I'm going to end this now. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. You can put any questions down. I'll come back to them afterwards. I haven't started this live Facebook thing yet, but I'll come back to them afterwards, and I'll see you all soon. And obviously we'll keep going in October talking about podcasts. Thank you very much.